Cathal woke as he always did, shivering, aching all over, as well as his now dull but ever-present headaches which he attributed to their living conditions. The small room he and his 3 colonists were designated had once seemed clean and comfortable, but more often it now felt like a cell. He felt life had ever become harder in the past months, or what he presumed would be months. It could have been much longer, but as things had begun to deteriorate, nobody bothered to keep a close track of time any longer, especially as no one living within the Ark ever saw daylight. Cathal almost never made use of his 30-minute pre-shift leisure time to, say, take a sterilization shower, eat a nutrition cube, or chat with his bunkmates. He needed those 30 minutes of extra rest just to keep himself functioning, and instead he'd scoff the NutriCube in the last minutes before they stepped out for their shift. The temperature of their quarters lately had been unstable. Nothing much seemed to work well anymore, and Cathal regularly awoke to dense condensation running down the walls, soaking his bed. Cathal wanted to bring these issues up with his supervisor, but knew the answer would always be the same: trust in the Protector. For he knows all and is the great equalizer. Cathal knew that workers had no need to think for themselves, they only needed to follow their daily orders. They should remain strictly punctual and trust that the Protector would always give them safety and security. A distorted message came through the intercom, shattering his lucid morning thoughts. Despite the distortion and static which would have made understanding the message incredibly difficult, it was at this point irrelevant, primarily because it was the same every day. Cathal thought about how the far more pertinent aspect of this pointless daily message was the piercing electronic tone that was just beyond comfortable. They all knew that despite their deteriorating conditions, this was no doubt deliberate, designed with a specific purpose, as was everything in the Ark. No element of their life was left to chance or without prior thought by the Protector. The intercom was likely designed to be impossible to ignore. Its harsh electronic sound pierced their very senses and felt to Cathal like it was pulling his nerves through his teeth or scratching around the cells inside his brain. The daily occurrence of these messages had become far from being tolerable and instead had become progressively unbearable. In fact, it had become borderline torturous. Cathal felt that this was also no mistake, and that their punctuality on the line had somehow become critical. He had no evidence to prove it, but his gut feeling was that their presence was required by any means necessary, even torturing people to come out and get to work. All of the small details and changes in their lives that had happened seemed to point towards this fact. Then came the speaker over the intercom, which was, as always, Supervisor Vallis.
Turn out Team ST-342. Stand ready, your shift begins in 10.
This was followed by a less shrill and artificially sounding automated message.
Trust. Obey. Survive. We are the Ark. We are one.
Cathal and his 2 dorm mates rolled out of bed in the clothes they now worked and slept in. The uncomfortable filth of his clothes, the grease, the dirt, and stiffness to the worn overalls prompted him to recall momentarily how, as a child, he and his father had kept their own quarters. They hadn't shared a dorm room. Fresh, clean clothing was brought to them daily, but now for the line workers, nothing seemed clean anymore. They hadn't received clean overalls for weeks or maybe even months. The walls had slowly begun to rust from the ever-present condensation which poured down walls in the dorms and corridors that weaved throughout the underground city. They all trudged out into the corridor, exhausted as usual. Sleep had been continually cut from what had originally been a set 8 hours to their current 6. Some were finding these changes more difficult than others. Accidents had been occurring with increasing regularity and severity. Some workers would disappear off to the medbay, complaining of severe blinding headaches, being unable to focus their vision. Leisure time had been previously a comfortable 7 hours each day, and despite being the worker class, they'd had good facilities for exercise, socializing, and creative pastimes. All of these had now been gradually neglected and reduced until they were only allotted 3 hours each shift to eat and socialize. Most entertainment areas were closed and non-functional, and Cathal didn't feel that chatting with other exhausted workers in dorm rooms before collapsing into sleep qualified as socializing. All the worker class colonists were now on a typical 17-hour day, and 18 if you counted their transitionary overlap hour. But still, despite the hardships they endured, Cathal knew the schedule they were assigned to be essential for their own survival, and more importantly, for the Ark itself and all the humans living here. the Protector demanded it, and as it was deemed necessary, there was no questioning it. Cathal knew he occupied one of the lowest levels of worker in the colony, as did all the line workers. But he also knew that no matter any colonist's assigned role, this was based on your assessed skills to ensure maximum efficiency and success for all. It was entirely logical, and so no one bore any resentment. They were doing their best, and the thing that they were best capable of doing, and so who could be dissatisfied with that, especially if it meant the success and survival of all. Cathal stood in the dimly lit corridor, the occasional lamp flickering, as supervisors including Valis walked up and down the workforce, inspecting for any weakness, to try and preempt any shift casualties, less for the fact of preventing a fatality, more to ensure smooth operations and no downtime in production. They were ready to begin as the lights turned amber and they all chimed in unison. "We are the Ark, we are one." All turned to face right and began marching down the corridor to where the transport was waiting to shuttle them down to the main production facility. As the transport flew around the vast open rotunda of the industrial and weapons sector, descending toward the manufacturing line and the automated forges, he never ceased to be impressed by the scale of their home. How such a vast facility had been carved out from the rock he couldn't possibly fathom. Such installations had been built far before his time, but the generally agreed upon myths between the workers were that anything as long as 100 generations before, his ancestors had been forced underground by a war of an apocalyptic scale. No one knew for sure, but it was often heard to be said that a war with the machines had plagued the galaxy. The last messages his world had received were that some colonies managed to escape the worst of this war, but many more had been annihilated by the scale of the conflict. Worse, before his people could recover, they were assailed by entities of unknown origin which had torn the minds of men apart and threatened to consume and destroy all. Luckily for Cathal's ancestors, the Protector had learned techniques thanks to the black rocks they had found as part of their mining operations below the surface, and the Protector had developed the means to repel and resist the horrors that enveloped themselves and presumably all other worlds. And this was when their great Protector was said to have decreed that the galaxy was changing, that it was becoming unpredictable and extremely hazardous. To ensure their very survival, they must begin converting their mining operations into their primary habitation so as to ensure their protection from any surface assaults or unknown threats. At some point, this new colony habitat, for whatever reason, was designated as the Ark. Its apparent objective was to preserve the knowledge and ways of humanity from their shining age, with the hopes to one day bring mankind back again into the light, no matter how long it would take to achieve their goal, no matter how many generations. However, this seemingly laudable plan, forged presumably by the figure known as the Protector, or so it was assumed according to fragmented and ruined texts that have been widely circulated and copied millions of times over by the population, point toward the suggestion that this mission had originally only been meant to last for the more limited scope for something like 10 generations. The Ark, in its current state, had now existed for well over 100 generations. Still, for the populace, true or not, it wasn't their place to question such matters, but something had clearly occurred to delay their emergence from the Ark, and moreover in recent decades the Protector had been dictating that their colony focus more and more of its resources on the production of weaponry and powerful defensive systems. This was of no significant cause for concern for the population, but regardless it did lead to much casual speculation, and that is of course without making mention of the rumours of a construction that many had referred to as an M drive. And this was Cathal's current destination for his shift, to continue the grinding construction work of assembly, burning hot air, oiled machinery and tedious labouring. Despite the M drive's rumoured title, which no one really knew the origin for, there was nobody who knew its ultimate purpose, and this was not unlike so many things, it was instead always purely the will of the Protector. The workforce were generally given very little information as to what they were doing or why it was necessary, they simply believed in the will of the Protector. As Cathal stepped off the transport, he looked upward to the towering vast construction that they toiled over day and night. A huge orb with thousands of pipes and electric circuitry leading off in all directions. Cathal felt a moment of doubt and caution. He felt it had a presence and a power beyond his comprehension, but he took strength and security in remembering the Ark's litany: trust, obey, and survive. Now this short piece I was originally going to submit to the Open Black Library competition for narratives for 40k. I decided instead to go with something else, but you know, I've really enjoyed doing some pieces of fanfiction and it's probably something I'll continue, especially maybe in this shorter format. For those of you who do not care about spoilers, should I ever want to expand this little piece of fanfiction any further, what follows was my original synopsis for the colony. As always, tell me what you guys think down below as well. So the idea here is that this is a colony originating from the dark age of technology and has been entombed below the surface of a planet. The colony's AI has essentially become their leader and protector at this point. The humans have neared to abandon thinking for themselves and instead allow the AI to make all choices for them, and its primary goal is to keep them safe and secure. Unbeknownst to them, when the planet was colonized, it held below its surface a Necron tomb. And after explorations by the colonists, this was subsequently cannibalized by the STC, and it learned by deciphering the Necron inscriptions how to shield the planet from the worst of the warp ravages that beset mankind during the Age of Strife. This AI had also sensed via long-distance sensory systems the approaching crusades of the Emperor and proceeded to instruct its colonists to scuttle their own habitat above ground, making it appear as if the world had been ruined, as had many during the Age of Strife, and instead to retreat to the lower levels of the planet where they would remain entombed under the leadership of the AI, known to them now only as the Protector. Since then, the Imperium has designated the planet as being a place of interest for its mineral wealth, and various surveys have been conducted. And it's for this reason that the time is approaching when the Protector will have to take action again to protect the colonists from the threat posed by the Imperium. As it has begun to militarize, the Protector has refocused their efforts on defense and begun construction of a massive ground-to-orbit weapons battery. It also has begun to fashion new Knight units and any manner of weaponry, including Astartes' similar suits and a variety of Titan, as well as other infantry weaponry. The AI known as the Protector's ultimate goal is to complete its gravity well drive, referred to the colonists as the M drive. It's the AI's hope to be able to transport the planet itself and escape beyond the reaches of the Imperium and travel out beyond the rim of the galaxy itself, taking the last remnants of the golden age of man far beyond the decay and destruction that is left behind. It's possible that the AI has also learned how to power itself and the colony by a Catan fragment held within the Necron ruins below, and is also suppressing their awakening. The STC AI long ago was able to deactivate most Necron within the planet, as it was able to understand their technology long before their period of awakening. The colony itself has a 28-hour day and a population something in the region of 20 million. It's split into 4 quadrants, each with 350 worker teams. Of those 350, each will work half the day, and 125 teams each work a 16-hour shift, and each team there is roughly 10,000 individuals. The entire workforce makes up roughly 3.5 million per sector, or 14 million colonists total. As always, a reminder, this is a 100% unofficial piece of fanfiction, and I just wanted to include a little bit of exploratory narrative thinking here. I hope that you guys enjoyed, and if you did, please tell me what you think down below, as well as dropping a like to the video. I'll be back soon with some more 40k lore stuff, and I have some bigger videos coming up along the way as well. Thanks for watching, I'll see you next time.